interestingly enough, we are going to see double warrior bans, which might sound weird, but we didn't see much of yesterday, right? We were seeing a lot of the other bans. Swidz had his rogue banned away yesterday. So unfortunately, it's kind of, we get to see this rogue in action now, but we don't get to see Swidz's warrior, which is one of the slightly different ones we discussed with that Kargath and the more sort of control style with the addition of that Zephyrus, the great in there as well. So we're not going to see that, but we are going to see his rogue as we dive into game number 1, and it is going to be that rogue to go up against Bozzdton's Malygos Druid in a bit of an odd matchup. What do you make of this clash?
Yeah, there is, again, a little bit of a window for the Rogue to get underneath the Druid here, because it is the slightly clunkier build with the Malygos Druid. They do have all those abilities to draw all those combo pieces, interfere. Moonfires don't really have a big impact on the board. In essence, the amount of high-cost things that you have are relatively similar. For every Malygos or Alexstrasza you draw, that can just be a survival of the fittest in the other deck, for example. But it's just all the additional supporting cards that you have to play around it, which I think are a little bit clunkier and slow the deck down a little bit on average. So that does give the opportunity for Swidz to just go a little bit faster, get underneath that with a fast start. And of course, that Cult Neophyte dynamic is always huge in this matchup. Timing it to block ramp or timing it to block power spike turns with Guardian Animals, for example, can be enormous.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, as someone who has put a lot of questions on this rogue deck, the more I have seen it played over the course of the weeks of Grandmasters, especially from players such as Bunny Hopper, I do actually feel like a weird strength of the deck that I maybe didn't give enough credit to is less about how powerful your turns are and more about how horrible you can make your opponent's turns.
That's true.
And I think that's a combination of Hanar plus secrets that all interact in awkward ways for your opponent. And then, Neophyte, as you were mentioning as well. I think all those things just add up to the Rogue's opponents having horrible turns, and it's such a weird way to view a deck, but I think this is one in that unique spot. It is slowly convincing me, Saul, slowly.
Worth noting that this particular build from Swidz does not play the Cult Neophyte, so he's making room for extra secret with the 1 ambush in there alongside 2 dirty tricks to plagiarize, and also that Faceless Corruptor, which is the Swidz signature card, as we've seen it being played in this deck. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. And honestly, Raven, I think the conclusion is because I think every GM caster had a vendetta, pun intended, against this deck for a while, because we just couldn't get any performance out of it in testing. But genuinely, I think all of us just low-rolled for 3 weeks straight while playing this deck, because
probably fair.
I have put in some time with it outside of our testing, just on ladder, over I think last week, and my results were just insane compared to what we were doing in testing. And I was trying, I wasn't playing differently. It's just, I was occasionally drawing some card draw, which is nice, which is something that never seemed to happen when we tested the deck.
Yeah. Well, already things are starting to heat up here. Bozzdton does get to have his wild growth to start going for that ramp, has overgrowth as well, and another one. Bozzdton is just missing the card draw. And that's all he has to focus on trying to get to in the near future, because now he has all of the mana he could ever want.
Yes.
Just no cards to really utilize it with. But in the meantime, Swidz, it's starting to put forward a bit of pressure. And again, it's less like, I'm going to kill you aggro pressure, and more, are these secrets going to completely wreck Bozzdton's next turn, especially considering he's going into Guardian Animals time.
Indeed. No counterspell offered here, which would potentially be the dream, having seen Bozzdton ramp from 4 to 7 on the previous turn. Value just in Mirror Entity because it's Mirror Entity and it's just very good against the deck, but also to then bluff that counterspell. Having taken this long on the decision, Bozzdton would probably just straight up call it out at this point. Because I think he'd snap take the counterspell there in a lot of positions.
Yeah, and honestly, I was sat there while you were describing that pretty well. And it was
thanks, bud.
Yeah, no worries. Let's give you a compliment. And was just staring. I'm thinking, is the Mirror Entity just good anyway? With the added bonus of it could be counterspell, right?
Right.
Because look at the deck. Well, there aren't any small minions to throw down here. The smallest is a Ghidra, which is, do you really want to give your opponent a Ghidra? I think it actually could have been valuable. Obviously, Swidz going for the cheaper secret so he can get a Paladin secret on top. But I think there was some decent merit to a Mirror Entity there.
I did kind of like that line as well, because what Swidz could have done there is taken the Mage secret there, Mirror Entity, played it, and then taken whichever Paladin secret got offered at that point, which then sets his hand up really, really nicely for the Edwin next turn, because he has Backstab, Paladin secret, Devolving Missiles, Edwin against any minion that would come down, and a minion is pretty likely to come down in this position. Since he chose a 2-mana secret there instead, he was then offered the Paladin secret, took it, and then played it immediately, which gives him a slightly worse Edwin hand. So I think that was something that was very much worth looking at there as well.
Bit of a rough one here, though, from Bozzzton as well. Does go for the breath. He gets a Teacher's Pet to go into this board, but there's so many secrets. I don't think Bozzzton is expecting this Teacher's Pet to do too much here.
Nope. Especially since he already confirmed ambush.
Yeah.
Like, he knew this part was happening because he cast Overgrowth on the previous turn, and neither Dirty Tricks nor Plagiarize procced. So he knew the ambush was going to come down here.
And also, Repentance going to be pretty sweet. Means that if Swidz wants to, that's a good one. He can actually just hit through this instead of committing a Devolving Missiles right now.
Yeah, he might just want to, though, right? He might just want to cast Devolving Missiles here anyway.
What if he bops it first, then devolves? Is that not better?
Well, he wants to cast Backstab and Devolving Missiles this turn all the time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he can hold. Okay, sure. He can hold the Devolving Missiles and just take a 2-cost secret instead. That's fine.
Yeah, that still works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most importantly, I think using damage to kill the first half means that at worst, the Devolving Missiles is always good against the board then. Well,
I mean,
it's not looking great, is it?
Your hand does one thing, and it doesn't do it very well.
And I know there's not many people who are going to be with me on this, but when I've been practicing some Malygos Druid, I've actually been playing the version without blooms, and it has extra beasts in it and stuff for, your guardian animals to be a bit more consistent. And I'm like, you know what? I can see it. I don't often just bloom out swipes for big combos or anything like that. I don't know. And these staring at this hand makes me appreciate my own decision. So it's a pat on my own back there.
Yeah. A couple of Cave Hydras in Bozzzton's hand right now. He'd be winning this game easily, right?
Maybe. I was thinking, an extra animal or two. A Thresher would be nice. Because he is only playing 1/1/2, right? 1 Thresher, 1 Teacher's Pet, and 2
that's right.
Runners.
Wait, I said Cave Hydra, didn't I? No, never mind.
You did say. That's why I was confused for a split second and then chose to go a different way. Oh.
Yeah, Snipe, Moonfire. Remaining secrets are Noble Sacrifice, Freezing Trap, and the Dirty Tricks, which is going to proc now off these Moonfires. So this Mally is even just already locked up twice on board with a Noble Sac and a Freezing Trap. It's already dead on board anyway to the ambush. Yeah, that's a good point. At least it is not pressure play.
You got to take these small victories when you have no cards in your hand.
Yeah.
And there's just a quest in to back that up anyway. So although the Van Cleef got dealt with, it cost Bozzzton effectively his Malygos and double Moonfire. And with Swidz at 30 health and still in control of the board, it's not looking great, is it?
Yeah. He can just go questing ambush Paladin secret here, still deal with the Mally with the ambusher that he already has. Even though there is obviously Freezing Trap in play, it is a Mally. You should probably just kill it for the sake of 2 damage.
Probably Repentance again. It's a small option, but there's still Geppetto, there's still Alexstrasza, arguably hard-cast Beasts or Forest Warden Omu. Makes Gidra a little bit worse. I just think it's not game winning or losing particularly, but I think it's just probably the best choice in that instance.
Yeah,
That's
and I like Dirty Tricks again here. I think Swidz way past the point where any spells need to be countered. He just needs to make sure that if there is any kind of stabilization from Bozzzton, that he can just keep drawing resources and keep pressuring. So seems fine to me.
Probably the best card Bozzzton could draw there, honestly.
Oh, the goods.
So Noble Sack and Freezing Trap, right?
Yep. There's the freeze. The next one will now run into the
Oh,
Noble
no,
Sack,
yeah,
just coming
no,
out now.
Proc, yeah, proc.
So the Questing Adventurer can get dealt with. Choose to prioritize the Hanar, though.
And this Hanar has been an absolute nightmare for Bozzdton for most of the game, actually. It's just been down from, what, turn 2 or 3, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Time waits for no one.
Now, Bloom Hydra available? Okay.
With
like
Overgrowth,
it.
yeah.
Yep.
Nature speaks through us. You fell right into my trap.
Still just about finds himself a value
Yeah.
trade here with the
I was gonna
Overgrowth.
say. Yeah, Crystal Power wouldn't have been so good, would it? Oh, the flick! He knows the minion is Twilight Runner.
I mean, it does cost 7. It's kind of dead already. Bozzdton's
but is it,
overloaded for 4 next turn.
It's a 4/4. What else are you flicking? I just think right now it's the only hope Bozzdton has. It allows him to push more damage. And he
Yeah,
can still
fair
play
enough.
the alley. I know you said the alley cat. The Pharaoh. It's like I think it's still just the right play.
Fair enough. Otherwise, you're looking at like Ferrocat, Miscreant, play some lackeys, play dirty tricks, maybe.
You know, like Waste Warden or something. It's not Waste Warden, is it? I'm talking rubbish. The 5-drop.
Wasteland Assassin.
That's it. Yeah. 50% of it, right?
Yep.
One stab, many kill.
Yeah, I think it's just fine.
Well, there's your hero, the Lake Thresher, boss. To get him out of this.
Not without Broom. No. Not really. Which he doesn't play, of course. I just want to point
Yeah.
out.
What to do?
-2 blooms, +2 brooms.
Currently 9 showing on the other side.
I mean, does he have much of a choice? I mean, I imagine he can start with excess mana, but outside of, I don't even know what, a swipe, he doesn't really have much choice but to play the Thresher, right? You can't just hang on to it.
So I think starting with the excess mana is actually the only choice this turn, because by holding on to it, he allows himself to top deck Ysera next turn and give himself a potential win condition with the immediate draw off the excess mana. So I think that's the only thing Bozzdton was really thinking about that turn.
Okay,
because
okay.
The rest of the play is automatic, and I do like holding it for that reason. It's a
And
small
also
out,
swipes.
but it's an out.
Yeah, and like I said, like Swipe was the potential other playable card, but that only kills the flick, you know,
Yeah.
so it still doesn't achieve too much anyway.
Moms, get free.
I mean,
Yes, every day of the week.
yeah.
Still 2 turns away, Swidz does not quite have access to the mana ramp that Druid does on Bozzdton's side, but I struggle to see how this could go wrong.
Agreed.
Too soon.
Bad this outcome is 3-2. Okay. Swidz decided he just wanted to ship all damage face there, just in case Taunt comes down, like injured Tolvir, for example, that he eventually couldn't get that damage face after he just picked Pyroblast. Probably fine. Hello?
Oh, well.
I love it when a plan comes together, Raven.
Yeah. Well, let's wait and see if it actually does come together, because a plan that doesn't pay off coming together isn't quite the same, is it?
Look, I'm just saying there's a chance. Work with me here, okay?
I think it's Bozzdton and Ysera that need to work with each other here.
My dream is your nightmare.
The only choice he has.
Yep.
And these dragons, one, have to even be drawn, but two, have to be still quite significant even after the fact.
Yep. Evasive Draconid, Evasive Worm, Emerald Explorer.
I
Whoop.
can see.
Wah wah.
Honestly, good effort from Bozzdton. It was a long shot, but it was, like you said, it was a chance there, and it could have paid off and at least recovered him a little bit. But honestly, we do just continue to see this rogue deck do quite well. However much I may or may not like the archetype, I did mention at the start of that game there, it is. I'm coming around to it, and I think you can see again, quite honestly, there it was tough card draw options or lack of for Bozzdton, but each turn with those secrets and then the Van Cleef, then a questing, it was constant questions and awkward decisions that Swidz was even asking, even if there was card draw in hand for Bozzdton.
Yeah, and I will say I'm kind of long past coming around to it and have come around to it. I think I'm now completely flip-flopped to the point where I think it's a deck that's being underbrought. We are actually seeing it getting banned in a couple of series now, which is pretty interesting in a few lineups. But I do think it's just part of that kind of dynamic I was talking about where, for example, if you think your opponent has Mage and that Rogue deck, suddenly Demon Hunter is a good bring for you. So I think there's certain aspects of the Conquest metagame that are kind of in flux right now, and that's why we're seeing a lot of decks being brought with about a 30% win rate, and I think that Rogue is right in that. 30% bring rate. I think that Rogue is right in that mix as well, but I think it definitely has a home in a lot of lineups in GM for the last couple of weeks.
Well, either way, Swidz takes an early victory against Bozzdton, leading 1-0. But we are going to go to a quick break while we set up that game number 2 for you guys. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with some more Grandmasters. Welcome back, everyone. We have plenty more Hearthstone for you today as we are only one game in on our first match. Swidz taking a win with that Rogue versus Bozzdton's Druid. Means that the series is, of course, going to continue, but without the Rogue being an option here. Druid and Demon Hunter left for Swidz up against the full Bozzdton lineup here. And are there any big holes that you can see, Sottle, that in either player's lineup right now? Any weak points that you can see?
I mean, it's hard to say. We've had mixed opinions on the Demon Hunter up until this point, and I think now that the Rogue has got a win, you know, that's something that we've had question marks, even though we're now sort of coming around and we've seen the light on the Rogue deck. So I think outside of that, like, you can't really point fingers at Survival Druid in Swid's lineup, right? Like, that seems to be just the one deck that there really aren't too many question marks around. Right. So from Bozzdton's side, just that Highlander Priest for me, I do feel like that deck is a little bit of a relic overall, and I think the 2-of versions, either with or without Galakron, you know, taking in Holy Smites and Pyromancers if you're looking to deal with aggro, or more mid-rangey stuff like the Twilight Drakes if you're looking to go long against slower decks. I think that's generally a better way to go this time around, but Bozzdton's still very much on that Highlander Priest train, as a few other players still are, and again, you know, general matchup considerations do come into that as well.
Yeah, we are going to see one of those players coming up next versus Tice is Blyze, who is bringing a Highlander Priest and has done pretty much all season as well. So we do get to check that out a little bit later in the day. But for now, it's going to be Swidz on that Demon Hunter and Bozzdton on the Druid once again. And a bit of a weird differences in the general matchup. I still don't think this is that good for Demon Hunter for two reasons. Or for one main reason is Swidz, isn't running the Magtheridon, and it's definitely a matchup where I think Penflingers get a lot less done than some other matchups. And also,
yes,
Bozzdton. That's a good end. Bozzdton, although has like the slower deck and the more combo based deck, he does have more tools to actually deal with some of these on curve minions from Swidz, so we might well see, you know, earlier swipes just used as removal tools to stop this early board that Demon Hunter does like to get cooking.
There you go, APAC. That's how you do it. Wand Maker into Twin Slice. That's what you're supposed to do. What's this philosophy garbage you guys are all coming out with over there?
Yeah, and I think I heard, I'm not sure if it was Gia or Derek, but they were like, oh yeah, it's even, I would rather have a double jump. I was like, what are you talking about? Double jump? Sick. It activates a knife thrower, or a penflinger, sorry, I'm naming the wrong cards now, and also gives you another card. That's insane.
The good old pen juggler. Yes, of course.
Don't leak next expansion cards.
Sorry.
Or is that what happens when you just have 3 of the penflingers into battlegrounds near you?
Yeah. I think Swidz just daring Bozzdton to hero power this minion. Bozzdton nearly took the bait. I'm not a very good lip reader at the best of times, even worse when I have to do it in French, but I think that's what Swidz was mouthing to his opponent here. It's, oh, Swidz, you let me down. I set you up so well, and then you hit the philosophy of the second one. Damn it. But yeah, I think interesting line in itself for Swidz here to go coin 2 into 2 and avoid the Spirit Jailer on 1. It just representing so much additional damage, just that 1 extra turn quicker by going 2 attack minion into 2 attack minion and just getting to push damage turn and turn again. Hold back on that Spirit Jailer until he actually has any real reason for the Soul Fragments to end up in his deck. Now, this way he's just making a very, very aggressive board.
And I've seen some Grandmasters keep Spirit Jailer in matchups like this, and I don't really know why. Because yes, it's a 1-drop, but it's a 1/3. You're not going to beat Druid up with a 1/3. So although the damage does stack up a little bit, I do like, obviously when you've got the choice, it's great, but even like mulliganing for more aggressive options, even if it's a weapon or something a little bit later down the line.
Bozzdton is going to drop that Overgrowth. I think killing a 2/2 here does still save damage in the long run, because it means that this will now be a 3-minion board as opposed to a 2-minion board. It's a 3-minion board that would get answered very, very nicely by Lake Thresher, but that single copy of Lake Thresher is in Bozzdton's hand right now, so that's not going to come down here off the Guardian Animals.
It also does as well free up the 1 mana once again for Bozzdton this turn, so if his Twilight Runner decides to draw something for 1 mana, whether that's another Crystal Power or Nature Studies, it is castable instead of being forced into a Crystal Power this turn. So yeah, I like that a lot. Just using mana wisely.
Swidz played around the eventuality very nicely. Biggest minion in the middle, so the cleave has to hit the center point, or Bozzzton has to waste an attack on the other guardian animal that would come out alongside the Lake Thresher. Obviously, Swidz doesn't know that the Lake Thresher's in hand, and that wasn't a possibility. No reason not to play around it there. Fairly nice looking Blade Dance possibilities here to clean this up. In the absence of a Shard Shatter to do a similar job. Probably about time to start getting some Soul Fragments in your deck as well, having just drawn Sociologist as well.
Yeah, I agree. That also just makes it look a little bit weird if he wants to Chaos Strike, which... It's tough how you manage this if you do want to tick all the boxes, isn't it? I guess you could wait till next turn to shuffle in instead and go Chaos Strike, Hero Power, Blade Dance.
Yes. Otherwise, you go Twin Slice, Hero Power, Blade Dance, and then you can fit in the 1/3 this turn.
I just wonder if that's worth using a Twin Slice for. Because it's also not drawing a card either.
Okay, animations are a little bit out of sync there. It looked very much to me like the Blade Dance got cast before the Hero Power, which I was about to get on my high horse again, but no, you're all safe for now.
Well, that Guardian Animals is pretty bad. I believe only pulling one Twilight Runner now.
That's right. Still a fairly useless tool, useful tool at some point, perhaps, with this Ysera Unleashed coming down now. But this is scary territory here for Bozzzton. Only 12 health to play with, and a big chunk of damage coming through now from Swidz.
Yeah, I think with no weapon active, this is relatively safe a lot of the time, and I think it's the last chance Bozzzton feels he can play Ysera. He does have Alex Straza to himself as follow-up if Swidz decides to just say, okay, I'll do loads of buffs, put him down to like 2, 3, 4, whatever. He can just self-Alex and gain the AA, which is a pretty powerful response. Yeah, with only 6 mana and no weapon equipped and also half a Twin Slice gone, the chance of actually putting out a lot of damage here is slim.
I grow impatient.
Swidz, from his perspective, does have the opportunity to just try and push lethal over 2 and just call that the game plan. He doesn't have a lot to fall back on from that point.
I think he might be looking at Soul Share actually this turn and then just like Chaos Strike. Oh, Chaos Strike then Soul Share potentially. Because then he can just set himself up for a big Sociologist the turn after and try and stick the ball.
True, yeah. I actually like that line. He could have still gone like double Chaos Strike there with the Soul Share, and then
Soul Share last, right?
Right, and still had the lethal over 2 potential. Just with the lapidary, the twin slice, the second slice, and the hero power on the following turn. But he does give himself a better Sociologist Militia out if that's what he needs to go for on the following turn instead. Kind of nice. He just makes biggest board now instead, though.
Hydra into overflow. Oh, not what Swidz will want to see.
Life and hope are worth fighting for.
Lightning Bloom hero power, question mark?
I was more wondering if it's ever like double trade the ones on the left into the 5/5 and then just Gidra the 1/3.
Well, so the only problem right now is that Swidz currently has 6 damage in his hand, and that allocates 5 mana. So currently Bozzzton is dead to a second Twin Slice top deck. Obviously that's super caster vision, and having not seen a weapon all game, you wouldn't really give your opponent credit for having that kind of range in their hand. So I respect it. The draw is Soul Share, okay.
And this is a bit of a problem now, actually.
It's a huge problem. think he just has to go for it, right, with the Chaos Strikes? It's probably just his best out.
Oh, the Consume Magic for the Ghidra. I guess he's... Does he assume he's going to be able to stay alive this turn?
I think you take one more draw for Twin Slice here, right? Like, it just ends the game.
Yeah, I think so.
Impatient.
I
Okay.
guess
next
that's
cut.
a draw. So,
Yeah, but it was there!
Oh.
It was there! He beat Chaos Strike! Oh, I beat Chaos Strike, Raven!
oh, this is going to hurt so much. Even earlier on, when I said using the Twin Slice instead of a Chaos Strike when you didn't really need to, might buy him because it's just more mana for the same amount of damage. It's a huge, huge deal.
It was, but I do think that play actually worked out in Swidz's favor because it allowed him to develop a 1/3, which actually attacked a couple of times. So I actually think he gained damage in the course of what happened.
Regardless, though, the Alex just setting up the lethal was enough there for Bozzzton, even through the silence. And Bozzzton manages to even this up, and that was an exceptionally close game. Wow. Oh. It was insane. Like, if he just Chaos Strike first, he would have had the mana to actually go for that and just get lethal. That was huge.
And I'm curious what the relative merits are there of cycling with the Consume Magic first, because, you know, if you Chaos Strike and you miss the Twin Slice, you can still just say, okay, that's fine. I'll ship all that Chaos Strike damage face. I'll still Consume Magic the Ghidra, right? I'll spend the rest of my mana on that. So there must be something that he's looking for in that position that he can hit off the Consume Magic that isn't just the straight up lethal. From the Twin Slice, but I'm not necessarily sure what that is off the top of my head. But you know, obviously I'm not being results oriented here because I was calling for it from the beginning of the turn before the Twin Slice even appeared. That it looked like just digging with the Chaos Strikes to end the game immediately did seem like the best line. It was unlikely you were unfavored from that position to hit exactly the one of the two Twin Slices remaining. Remember, because that first one was generated, I believe, to get out of that position. But it did feel like that game was completely slipping away from you at that point if you didn't just end the game on that turn. So I think I liked just straight up going for the lethal.
Yeah, and it feels like a huge missed opportunity here for Swidz. Not necessarily because of that turn, but because a win versus Druid as Demon Hunter, it should be worth extra points because it's pretty hard normally. So he was so close to actually just taking going 2-0 in that series and taking a tough game at that as well. And just having his own Druid to finish up with seemed pretty possible. Whereas now Bozzzton taking a win evens this up, and the match is not only looking even on score, but even just looking at the two decks for each player that's left, it's looking very, very doable for Bozzzton here. I think just as long as he gets hold of the priest game and gets a win with that, he's going to look great to bag another win with that Tempo Mage.
Yeah, it is. The queue order and just who gets the good matchups here is going to make quite some difference, I think, because I think the Highlander Priest is a little more vulnerable to the Demon Hunter than a 2-ofs build would be. So that's potentially somewhere where Swidz can get through. But then, you know, the same is true of the Mage on the other side, where the Demon Hunter can potentially get a good matchup there. So I'm expecting, yes, Swidz to just go straight back to the well here on this Demon Hunter and just try and get this deck over the line where he probably just has two matchups he's pretty happy to play.
Yeah, I like this a lot. Bozzzton going with a very quick mulligan, keeping the early minion base, Violet Spellwing and Lab Partner, just to have stuff to play on board nice and early. And that Apprentice doesn't look too bad. Just needs a couple of spells now, maybe a little bit more than just the Arcane Missiles he's going to get from that Spellwing.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those one evocation away from a good time hands right now with the Apprentice and the Giant there. Early Giants are enormous in this matchup if you can get them down nice and early. Swidz does have the key answer to that, which is Blade Dance, but he has so far seemed incapable of drawing a weapon in this deck, and even that Blade Dance is going to have a hard time dealing with a Mana Giant play from Bozzzton if he's not able to find a weapon to support it.
Yeah, the cursed Twin Slice, Second Slice, hit the Giant, then Blade Dance is not something you enjoy doing as Demon Hunter, but I have done it in the past because sometimes you just got to kill an 8/8 But yeah, it is a lot of resources and a lot of damage to pile into, quite frankly, a must-kill minion. Bozzzton also is, just going to triple check, yeah, he's running the Spellkin version, so he's not running a natural Conjurer's Calling, which can give Swidz arguably a little bit more room to maneuver about potentially leaving a Mana Giant up for a turn, but still, it's not something you want to do. Well, these are more minions.
They are. Very slow hand right now.
The Apprentice would contest the 1-3.
I'm just saying.
I'm just throwing it out there.
It's a legal Hearthstone play.
Oh wow, these draws are huge actually. Double Panthera is actually a pretty big deal.
Yes. Doesn't want to be hitting these soul fragments this early though, although Kayn is a decent pickup just to keep this pressure rolling, but once again, Swidz' hand sorely lacking a weapon currently. Potentially just about the perfect draw here. Bozzzton just needed something to bridge the gap before he can start coining out some of his tempo minions. He has not found the explosive spell generation hand that he would have liked to go alongside the Apprentice Mana Giant.
Yeah, I was even wondering. Go on.
I was going to say, with Mana Giant in hand, I do think Bozzzton should be as mana efficient as possible here. I don't think he should float mana with the potential for created spells in hand to be cast, because that's essentially double floating mana, right? Like, not only are you not doing anything with your mana on that turn, but you're also just wasting time on discounting the Mana Giant. So, yeah, fully respect Bozzzton just throwing out the Arcane Missiles there. It was very likely to do nothing of note, but he actually got an extremely good outcome out of the Arcane Missiles.
I was a little bit surprised that Swidz didn't kill the Spellwing with his 1-3 last turn, because it just protects the Panthera a little bit more. But, you know, if the Arcane Missiles are going to do that, then whatever. At that point, there's nothing you can do about that one.
Imagine trading, Raven. I want you to actually close your eyes and imagine trading.
Nope. No, can't really do it.
How did you feel?
Icky, I think is the right word, right?
There you go.
A choice of 5 drops to coin out here. Upsides to both. The big one I can see is that the Raz does actually kill off the Kayn with the double trade, and leaving a 1-2 up just doesn't matter generally. I think that's an acceptable outcome here for Bozzzton.
I think you can make the opposite argument for Jandice here as well, because you can just very efficiently trade off the 1-3 on board. It's not like that 1-3 is causing a problem for your illusion minion. So it's actually a pretty nice board just to stick a Jandice on, in my opinion.
I just think that if you... So you'd want to trade off the 1-3 or not?
Yes. If I'm playing Jandice, I would trade off the 1-3, yeah.
I'm just wondering, is the average 5 drop, like, better for you, or is it better for Kayn to be dead? I don't know. I feel like there's more punishes for Jandice as well, because if there is just a Blade Dance, then it's way, way, way stronger versus the Jandice thing.
Sure. It's fair.
This is kind of hard to deal with, especially with no weapon equipped yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. Did Swidz just cut his weapons for pen flingers? Like, what's going on? Like,
Let me just check the list. Oh yeah, he has! Oh wait, no he's not. I'm joking, of course. It would be funny though. Okay, here's the real question. If you could cut 4 weapons to play 4 pen flingers, would you do it?
No.
I definitely would.
I mean, I would, yes. Would I do it? Would I submit it for GM, you know, with everything on the line? No.
What if you were 3-1 in GM?
Also, no.
Okay. I think Bozzzton would love a studies right about now. That's like it would line this hand up very nicely indeed. Not only with the Raz on board, but to get something out of that cram session too.
Someday I'll be just like you.
Yeah, it's another reason why I was somewhat interested in the Jandice, is it felt like the Raz had a lot of potential to get better, but I guess a Raz that sticks is the best possible kind of Raz, because then all of those primordial studies or extra lab partners or Solarians that you do pick up over the coming turns, you can just add them to the board that Raz is sticking on.
It is just a 3/6.
Yep.
Right? Like it's a pretty good minion. It's like the old Houndmaster Shaw days, right? Where if it just sticks, yes, it's giving things rush and that's powerful, but it's also just hard to kill in and of itself.
Right. See if Bozzzton is a missiles god gamer again. Yep, he sure is. That qualifies. Problem is, Bozzzton is getting somewhere here. He's just not getting there very quickly.
Right.
And Swidz has now found the opportunity to get a really nice clear here with the Soulshare Shard Shatter.
Shouldn't he... Okay. I guess he can hear a power. Honestly, would have liked to have seen the Pen Flinger. But okay, he's going to Mana Burn instead. Okay, that's fair, that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is very reasonable indeed. Try and find himself a turn of respite here. Stop Bozzzton from redeveloping again super hard, because he does need some time. His hand is continuing to do nothing. Lack of skull in hand, lack of weapon in hand. It's really hard to formulate any kind of game plan with this deck if you don't draw any of those cards.
What to do? What to do?
I would actually really like to see Bozzzton just... And it looks horrible, but Ray of Frost, Mana Giant, go. Your opponent's not had a weapon equipped all game, so probably just not got one in hand up until now. And you have Jandis to...
do that, right? This first Ray of Frost is natural, isn't it? He has to just raw play Giant if he's going to do that. You'd only have 3 mana left, and the thing wouldn't discount?
Oh, sorry, yeah, of course. For some reason, I thought it was generated off the magic trick, but it wasn't, was it?
No, I think it was just drawn naturally from the cram session.
Oh, okay. My apologies then. I thought it was from the magic trick. It's me being silly. Regardless, I do like the Giant coming down this turn, because I think Bozzzton has to assess his hand and say, well, I've not got a big spell pop off, especially with the Apprentice gone, or at least the first one gone. So what I do have is a Giant and then a Jandis to back it up with just raw minion pressure on board.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, play with what you've got. You know, make some powerful turns in other ways.
Well?
Lethal? That looks like kind of unlimited damage to me, so maybe he needs a bit more mana.
What are these draws, honestly, from Swidz? No weapons, no skull. Even Sociologist was insane on this turn because he still has three soul fragments left in his deck.
What if he just... I think he should hold, right? Push damage and then have a big turn next turn with Altruis? Like I said, Bozzzton doesn't play Conjurer's Calling naturally in the list. So you're not afraid of like the hardest of punishes.
Right.
I like it. I like this a lot. Look at the damage he has. He just kills the Giant with Altruis.
Bozzzton now digging deep, trying to formulate some kind of hand read on what just doesn't get played here on a 7-mana turn. Chaos Strike, Hero Power, Pass, hit face. What is the contents of the hand? He knows there's no weapons, he knows there's no Sociologist, he knows there's no Skull. Those are the easy ones. Those are the good cards that Swidz certainly would have played at this point. Then you start to narrow things down very quickly, right? I think Blade Dance is almost a given in there, and probably one or more Pen Flingers in there might be a given at this point, although maybe you're ruling those out because you think they would have been cycled off the Chaos Strike from this point.
You know what I'm very interested in? You know, we saw the stats of Tempo Mage win rate, 51 versus Demon Hunter. I want to see the stats of Tempo Mage versus Altruis Demon Hunter, because I think that makes a pretty big difference. The old Ray of Frost your own minion.
Yeah.
Bit late on the rope here from Bozzzton, but using all his mana and no Apprentice means he's not going to be able to cast any of these spells anyway. So... can't overly blame him for that, but now is go time.
It is indeed.
One Maker isn't bad either.
Yeah, One Maker's huge, because Swidz does want to start off playing from the right here, I think. He doesn't want to just immediately like rip his Blade Dance before he starts Twin Slicing, you know, to get the Outcast procs off the Altruis.
Well, he can at least Twin Slice once, not get the Altruis, but then the second slice will then proc and then Blade Dance. So
that's true.
There are ways he can go around it without this One Maker. It's just One Maker wasn't a completely horrible draw.
Is he
out,
just racing?
Pens flung.
Looks like he's just racing, right?
Well, How much damage can he do, right? He goes 1. Okay. Yeah,
Penflinger again.
Just not going to bother, yeah. It's just not going
Gets
to
the
bother.
outcast. Second slice, outcasts again, pushes 1 more. He pushes 4, opponent at 6. Penflinger in hand. So Marrow Slicer off the top is lethal, Twin Slice off the top is lethal.
What one maker into Twin Slice?
One maker
is
into
lethal.
Twin Slice is lethal, yep.
And also, to be fair, this Altruist does have to be dealt with, and he just saw 2 Ray of Frost be cast from Bozzzton.
And an Arcane Bro.
Oh, yeah, true. Kirin Tor, Gram Session. Doesn't do anything whatsoever this turn, but it's cool.
Is a play I've seen turned down way more often than I would have thought. I think it's deceptively powerful and people should be looking at that line a lot more. But you're absolutely right, it does nothing on this particular turn because you need to spend the mana to shoot the Altruist so your giant can go face.
There's a certain element of Netherwind Portal actually being potentially very good as well.
Runs out on me.
Wonder if it's like Arcane Breath, the minion, and then Netherwing Portal. Either way, I think Netherwing needs to come down this turn.
Just like you.
How's the Primordial Studies here, right? Look for a dragon. No, gets the dragon, Arcane Breath. Now you can look for Ice Barrier, Mirror Image, any of the protective spells. Nowhere near enough time to make all those decisions. I think Bozzzton was on the right line, but just got there a little bit too slowly for my liking. But very good in the end! Lapidary off the top! How was this a win?
It's got to be the Penflinger finish, let's be honest.
How
Don't you
was
dare,
this a
Swidz.
win, Raven?
Insane. Just too much pressure too early.
How is this just a W on the board? I don't understand. That draw was appalling from Swidz' side. He has played 2 entire games of Soul Demon Hunter without seeing a single weapon, and he plays 4 of them in his deck. What?
It wasn't the best natural draw you would ever see, but there was just a lot of stuff because he had double Panthara, right? He got to play them both back to back to start keeping the cycle going. And although, yeah, he didn't get to Skull, if you can't get to Skull, then you get to your other draw cards, which is super important because, honestly, maybe if he even just had a weapon instead of some card draw, maybe that's actually worse for him in some aspects because he doesn't get to cycle through his deck as much. Obviously, the weapons are fantastic, but I think the early minion pressure really helped him out a lot there.
I do want to sort of explain Bozzzton's line at the end because he had to do it all so quickly on the rope at the end of the turn that it's kind of hard to break down what was going on. He recognized how dead he was, so he needed to fish for defensive spells. He needed to generate an Ice Barrier or a Mirror Image or some way to actually be defensive in that possibility. Obviously, those cards don't start in his deck, so he has to figure out the most likely route to get to those cards. And which is why he chose to go Blood Mage and Cram Session in that point after he'd already committed to the Blood Mage, because he can then draw either the Kobold Spellkin from his deck to activate the Arcane Breath and then look for those spells, or the same thing with Primordial Studies, which is what ended up happening. You can hit Malagos or Azure Explorer to then activate the Arcane Breath. Then use the Arcane Breath, find yourself a Mirror Image or an Ice Barrier or whatever it is you need. He got all of that right. He had to do it all very, very quickly at the end of the game. It's just the Arcane Breath didn't play ball and give him the defensive option at the end.
And there's also a chance the card draw just gets him Evocation that gets him a Frostbolt, an Ice Barrier, you know, whatever as well. So there are still even other outs on top of that. So yeah, I do agree with the way he approached it. Just wasn't quite enough there. And that is going to leave Swidz just on his Druid, which is, you know, the one Mount Seller, the one Survival of the Fittest Druid in there with a decent chunk of the beast with the double Lake Thresher and double Anubisath Defender. So a deck I'm starting to like more and more the more we see. This feels to me as close to like the all-rounder build from Druid. It's not, you know, too amazing at one thing. It's not a Mali Druid that has some great matchups and some terrible ones. It is just a solid Druid deck.
Yeah, I very much agree. I think this is a good baseline for what Survival Druid is supposed to look like, and if you want to play a Living Dragon Breath for some reason, like if you want to cut the Wild Growth for another threat, you know, you can do those things, but I think this is a pretty solid starting point for what the list is supposed to look like.
It's just like tech from here, right? That's the starting point. Here, though, not great openings. I wonder how much Swidz is going to consider just Dreamway Guardians as a decent turn 2 play against Mage, can chip away at some of these minions. It's going to go for Nourish instead. Feels a little bit slow to me, Subtle.
It's certainly on the slow side, yes, but not necessarily the worst thing in the world when you are just currently missing that ramp.
I wonder. Time runs out on me. I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
Pretty solid opening though for Bozzzton. Again, not really going crazy with the spells, but one Maker and one Thief can quickly change that issue.
Yeah.
Mainly just having threats against this Druid is nice, just being able to start chipping away with the damage.
You don't pick the ones.
Job's done.
Oh, that's so troll. There's that mirror image. Right
Yeah.
on time, as always.
It's actually pretty clutch sometimes against Druid as well because of how it messes with Thresher so much, because it always ends on the end, right?
It can be, yeah. As long as you sort of keep your positioning in mind leading up to that point, which you know, Bozzzton can do now that he knows he has a mirror image in his hand.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
This is why I was a little bit surprised about the Nourish, especially with the Guardian Animals was already in hand at that point. I feel like if you just pick Dreamway, it just fights for board so much better early on, and then you can just get to the Guardian Animals turn, which then should refill your hand and so on, so on. I don't know. It does feel a little bit of a slow choice to me.
Yeah, it's a fair point to raise, but you have to ask the question of how well do your 1/2s actually fight for board against this deck, because their 1/2s and every minion in your opponent's deck in the early game has 2 or 3 attack apart from 1 Thief. And you're not a swipe deck, so does that actually help you out in the early game, I guess is the question?
Well, I think, honestly, if they both killed 1/2 drop from Mage, that's better than using a Broom and a Hero Power, is the way I saw it. And the you know, reflecting on the outcome of what actually happened there that Swidz had to commit to. So I'm just waiting to see what this Nourish does. I think that adds to it as well. It's less Dreamway is good and more is Nourish just terrible.
Sure. I think that's a fair question.
I wonder.
Oh, Font of Power, the go-to, but honestly, rolling Fireball is probably going to get some use against Druid, isn't it?
Yes, I tend to agree. Netherwind Portal and Rolling Fireball are both pretty good against Druid.
Yeah.
Bozzzton might feel like he's in more of a Netherwind Portal position here because he's the aggressor, and that's the more aggressive of the cards. Like, he's dealing with a very, very slow start from Swidz. But I absolutely would not object to the insurance policy of the Rolling Fireball here whatsoever.
Yeah, and funny enough, going full circle back to Font, it does allow him to play a Mana Giant next turn if he played Font this turn.
That's true.
So he would be allowed to just plop an 8/8 on the board.
Oh! Second, Anubisath, Defender, from the top.
Rolling Fireball from Bozzzton's hand. Might help a little bit, but not much, honestly, on this board.
Yeah, it's not getting enough done, right? That second Anubisath is just such a big breakpoint in terms of how much Bozzzton's able to remove here.
It's why I love the build so much. It's actually, I feel like we're all very stupid as a collective Hearthstone community that Anubisath has just took this long to make it into the Druid deck. It's like, Guardian Animals, pretty good spell you want to cast every single game on curve. What works well with those things? 3/5s.
Have you noticed that when you cast Guardian Animals, you also draw cards from your deck on the same turn, and that if you draw an Anubisath Defender from your Twilight Runner, it still costs 0, even if it wasn't in your hand at the start of the turn.
We're really dumb, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a good card.
Took us too long on this one. And this is the age-old issue in this matchup, honestly, is as Mage, you can do whatever you want to do. Obviously, certain hands make super early Mana Giants and so on, but generally, the one question you have is, can you beat Guardian Animals when they play it? And if you can't, you normally lose this game. And I hate to oversimplify it, but I think Mage just does not recover from points like this if they can't already do it on the response.
Yeah, I mean, they're actually, I'd say, pretty decent at getting just through Guardian Animals. It's the two Anubisat defenders alongside, right? Which just, I think, was the tipping point to be too much. Because I think you can see, like, just rolling Fireball on its own would have been fine there. You'll see positions with, like, devolving missiles, being able to pick it apart. If you just instantly respond to their Guardian Animals with your Sorcerer's Apprentice turn, a lot of the time that just blows it out. But this was just too big a board coming off the Guardian Animals, really, for Bozzzton to have any kind of response, especially with how slow and clunky his draw has been this game. Like, he stuck a Shenvala for 2 turns and summoned 0 5/5s off it. That's not supposed to happen. You're supposed to punish your opponent when they can't kill your Shenvala.
Right, and that's been common in both games now, right? Because Bozzzton's just not had access to spells.
Mm-hmm.
And I think although it looks bad, it is just an oddity, isn't it? Because he's also running Cobalt Spellkin in his list, which obviously we can see now, and that will generate him spells, but by now it's just too late.
Yep.
He still has Rolling Fireball and Ray of Frost, so he can get through some of this. Stall out the rest. I think this was the right way to do it as well. I think it's tempting to Rolling Fireball the Thresher because it's a Thresher, and arguably the most threatening minion on board. But it just does less if you do it that way, right?
It does, yeah. It takes less power off the board, so seems like the reasonable way to go about it.
And you don't have any minions anyway. Thresher's less good when there are no enemies on board.
Yep.
What to do?
Was this the plan for Nourish all along, to just act like a worse overflow?
He's largely not really going to even need to do that with it either, because he's got this Twilight Runner preloaded. He still has one in the Guardian Animals, which I think he's holding back on here just so he can rush it and get that card draw immediately on a following turn. He's not going to be short of cards this game.
No, that is true.
A simple spell.
And Bozzzton's not short of cards in number, he's just short of cards that he actually wants to play right now. Or can play right now, should I say.
Bozzzton just getting hard trolled. Needed Mirror Image last game, generates it immediately this game. Sat with a Kobold Spellkin in his hand, no Arcane Breath draw. Play the Spellkin, generate Arcane Breath.
Yeah. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you?
Here come all the resources Swidz could possibly ever need. Raven, certainly your questions have certainly proved to be quite astute here, as it looks like that Nourish is never getting played in this game of Hearthstone.
Of course, Swidz going to, Guardian Animals into second Guardian, getting draws from the runners, has negated much of that, but he did have one Guardian Animals in hand when he did pick up that Nourish, so I think that was the key point overall, but most importantly, how does Bozzzton dig himself out of this? Can Bozzzton dig himself out of this?
A simple spell.
None of those are Ray of Frost. He had opportunities. If he'd got multiple Rays off of the last 2 Spellkins that he's played, he could freeze this whole board and play 2 0-mana Giants this turn.
Right.
Now he can only do either or not even either or. He has no option to freeze the board.
He can do nothing.
Yeah. It's fine. He's got Stuart, though. It's always a good time if you've got Stuart. Life of the party.
Well,
Good old Stewie. I think it's going to be well played. A Mana Giant is not going to cut it here for Bozzzton. 2 Mana Giants are not going to cut it here for Bozzzton. That is going to be game, and that is going to be series. And Swidz continuing to perform in this Division B. Going up 4-1 now, and has to be extremely happy with how his season's going so far. There's always going to be a worry when you get placed in Division B for a season, but going 4-1 going to make him feel quite safe.
Yeah, and I think he answered the calling there very nicely. You know, I set it up at the start, and I said I think he understands matchups, and I think he demonstrates that he does play the game at a high level, and it's really just a focus issue or an endurance issue or whatever you want to call it. He just brain farts sometimes. That's what appears to happen with Swidz, and when that doesn't happen, he wins a lot of series of Hearthstone. Like, I think recognizing how much aggression he needed against Druid, going coin one maker into one maker there and being able to push all that additional damage. And all that additional damage kind of gave him an out at the end of the game with the Twin Slice, which maybe he should have gone for, which is kind of interesting. So, you know, outside of minor things, which I think it's very rare that we'll ever get through a series of Hearthstone without at least saying, well, maybe this, maybe that. But outside of, like, you know, the Nature Studies decision, whether he should have gone for the lethal with the Chaos Strikes, I think he was kind of on top of things that series, and I think he fought his way through some pretty unfortunate draws as well to come out ahead in particularly that Demon Hunter versus Mage matchup.
Yeah, and that's the key as well, right? I just want to add on that I do also agree. I think Swidz is understanding